They say that the night has eyes, but in where the night was blind and cold. The SUV that had carried Ekenna away from the shouting and the juju accusations was now nowhere to be found. The dust had settled, but the fear was rising like a flood. Eposi stood at the gate, clutching the herbal roots in her hand, her eyes searching the dark road for a sign of headlights. But the only thing she saw were the shadows of the banana trees dancing like ghosts in the wind. The man who had come to claim her as his wife had vanished, leaving her in a house filled with enemies and lies. Inside the parlor, the atmosphere had changed from a courtroom to a crime scene. The men in the dark jackets were no longer laughing. They were pacing like hungry leopards. Mami Hannah sat in the corner, her Bible clutched to her chest, her audacious claims about ritualists now replaced by the terrifying reality of guns and demands. She looked at my Auntie Rose, who was sweating despite the night chill. Chai! The woman who had so much to say about Nigerian criminals was now trembling because the real criminals were calling her by name. You see, Auntie Rose had made a deal that was darker than any juju. She had been the one to tip off these city thugs, telling them that a wealthy Nigerian was coming to the village with a Ghana must-go bag full of cash. She thought she could use them to scare Ekenna away so her own daughter wouldn't feel inferior. But Rose forgot one thing: you cannot play with fire and not get burnt. Now, the thugs were realizing there was no money and their patience was running out like sand in a broken pot. If he doesn't show up by midnight, the leader growled, someone in this house will take his place in the trunk of our car. Eposi closed her eyes and remembered a secret Ekenna had shared just a week ago. They were walking near the Mungo Bridge, the border between their two worlds. Ekenna had looked back at the Nigerian side and sighed. Eposi, he had whispered, sometimes being successful is a curse. People think you have a money tree, so they hunt you. I am tired of running. She realized now that Ekenna wasn't hiding a crime. He was hiding from crime. He was a man trying to buy a piece of peace in Cameroon, but the buyers of the villagers opened the door for the very wolves he was trying to escape. Suddenly, Eposi's phone vibrated in her pocket. It was a text from an unknown Nigerian number. Her heart skipped a beat as she read the words, "Tell your husband to pay what he owes or he won't make it to the wedding." She looked at the thugs in the room. Were these their men, or was there a second group of wolves in the forest? She realized that Ekenna was caught between the prejudice of her mother and the greed of the city. He wasn't a ritualist, he was a target, and he had vanished to protect her. The hours ticked by like heavy stones falling into a deep well. Midnight was approaching. The leader of the thugs stood up and grabbed Mami Hannah by the arm. "Time is up," he barked. "Since the Nigerian prince has fled, the mother-in-law will come with us." Mami Hannah let out a scream that shook the rafters. "Jesu, my people, come and save me." But the villagers, who were so brave when they were shouting ritualists, now were hiding behind their locked doors. They had realized that their gossip had invited a demon they couldn't exorcise. Just as the thugs were dragging Mami Hannah towards the door, Eposi stepped forward. She didn't have a gun and she didn't have juju. She held up the red bundle and the note in Igbo. "Wait," she shouted, her voice echoing with a strength she didn't know she had. "I know where the money is." Auntie Rose's eyes nearly popped out of her head. She knew there was no money, but she saw that Eposi was playing a dangerous game. The leader of the thugs paused, his eyes narrowing. "Speak quickly, girl, before I lose my temper." At that exact moment, a loud crash came from the backyard. The sound of breaking glass and a heavy thud filled the air. Was someone in the house? The thugs spun around, their weapons raised. Was it Ekenna coming to the rescue, or was it the second group of creditors coming to collect their debt? The room plunged into darkness as the main power line was cut. In the silence that followed, only one sound could be heard: the heavy, desperate breathing of a man who had been running for his life. Ekenna returned at midnight, but he wasn't the man who had arrived in the white senator suit. He burst into the room as the lights flickered back on, covered in dust, his clothes torn, and his eyes filled with a terror that made Mami Hannah freeze. He didn't look like a groom, he looked like a sacrifice. He looked at Eposi, then at the thugs, and finally at the red bundle in her hand. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. He simply pointed towards the gate, where the sound of police sirens began to wail in the distance. The village of Buea was about to witness a showdown that no one will ever forget. Who called the police? Was it Ekenna, or was it a final act of betrayal by Auntie Rose to save her own skin? And what will happen when Mami Hannah realizes that the criminal she feared was the only one trying to save her from the friends she trusted? The Lagos groom has returned, but the wedding bells are sounding more like a funeral march. The web of lies is tangling everyone's feet. Can love survive when the truth is this ugly? You are at the edge of your seat because the climax is finally here. Stay tuned because the story is about to take a turn that will leave you breathless. Episode 5, The Wedding Day Ultimatum, is coming up next, and the secrets being revealed will shake the foundation of everything you believe.